guys, welcome to Clockwork Noodles for another Clockwork Rewind. This time we are diving back another decade, back to 2013, and we're looking at Blood Lad episode number 1. It's a show I remember being unresolved. It had 10 episodes, there was never any real season 2, and it had 1 OVA. That is all I can remember about Blood Lad. We're going to dive in today, check out my score, check out Mal's score, see how it's aged. Do I think it's still good? Do I think it needs a reboot or anything? I definitely remember the show being different from what I saw today when I rewatched it. Make sure you guys are subscribed. Slowly getting through the summer. Summer is slowly ticking by, which means we're going to have my end of season review coming up in about 5 weeks. And that's where I'm going to crown my top 3 animes of the season. Make sure you tune into that video when it goes out. We're also going to have fun anime awards, overview of the next season, what animes are going to be breaking down. I already have my 3 shows. I just need to go through the list, finalize everything, and get ready to do that one. That's going to be a big one. The score on Mal is a dismal 7.2. It's pretty much an average score if you look at Mal's averages. I gave it an 8. The first thing I remember about Blood Lad is how stylish it is. Specific art style to it, arty, cartoony type style. It does remind me a lot of One Piece. Maybe it's the comedy, maybe it's the way it's drawn as well. I do think the art style has aided it. I think it actually still fits with the anime nowadays because of the way that it's drawn. Now, the intro technically is a narration, and you guys know how I feel about narrations. Very quickly meet the main character. Stas goes from telling you the stereotypical vampire, they drink blood, old men, and they're in like capes and stuff. So you meet Stas the vampire, who doesn't like the stereotypes of vampires. You do get some very nice comic reasons to why a vampire is actually technically stupid and crazy, how expensive it is in the human world, and why drinking blood is actually kind of just ludicrous. The second side to Stas, apart from being quite funny, is he is a otaku. Breathes everything that comes from Japan. He is obsessed. This show has so many Easter eggs. I'm not going to pick up on all of them. I think on a rewatch, it's definitely fun to have a look for the Easter eggs. If you are into just looking for Easter eggs, this could still be the show for you. The first one you see is the little key fob on Stas's phone as he gets a phone call. Quite a bit of Dragon Ball reference in this episode, especially at the end when he's trying to find a solution, when we get the Dragon Ball solution brought up. He loves anime. He lives in the demon world. The narration at the start is just kind of a, let's get it out of the way. Let's get to the good stuff in a sense. I still don't like narration. I do think it is a little bit on the rush side, but it is still very funny. You also see the rest of the cast with Vegeta in the next sequence. Imagine how he feels when he suddenly gets a phone call from his demons. A human girl has walked into the demon world. Devil is a part-timer Phil in that regards, commanding demons and people work for him. And he is very powerful. Subtly, Blood Lad is an isekai, which is really, really weird to me. A few people think I hate isekais. I don't. They're not my favourite genre. There have been a few, and you guys have seen that there's been a few that have made it onto my awards lists. There's been a few that I've really enjoyed. The intro is a little bit dated. Continue the colourful nature, continuation of blood being a recurring theme. Poppy song that I don't like it too much. It's nothing really to write home about, but it fits the show. Do remember that I have a big crush on Stas's brother because he's hot. He doesn't really appear till about halfway through, and there's only 10 episodes. I do think it would probably benefit from a remake, and the more I was watching this, I think a remake would be really, really good. Fan service on second watch is a little bit much for me. Now, I know people love their fan service. If you are into fan service, this is definitely the show for you. There's lots of it. Found it a little distracting. We're going into something serious, then suddenly there's bouncing boobs. Not my cup of tea, but it could be your cup of tea. Still a very good show, and I still did enjoy my second watch. I really enjoyed looking for the Easter eggs. Stas is trying to act big in front of his men. He needs to act big. I'm in charge of a territory. I need to make sure that everybody is obeying me. I need to appear bigger than I am. You know that it's just a mask, and underneath we've got that otaku. His men kind of know what's going on, but they don't want to talk about it because there's a bit later where they actually say that they know how much of a nerd he is. He ends up deciding that he wants to meet the girl from Japan, and his first thought is, I need to thank her for everything that Japan has made, which is a bit of a weird when it's like someone maybe coming to me and thanking me for tea when I had absolutely nothing to do with it. I do think the Easter eggs made it a lot more interesting for me. So when he starts to introduce her to his anime collection, one of them is Doraemon, blue character. It's a very old anime, one of the classics. Then it goes into his music collection. You can see the Dragon Ball is there. He's also got the Gundam soundtrack. And very recently, I found out that Hiroyuki Sawano did the Gundam Witch. He did the music for it. And it's actually really, really good. Chills when I watched his live video because he was at the Gundam launch pad in the harbour. Gave me chills. I didn't even watch the show. Fantastic composer overall. Don't know why it made me think of that when Staz is going through his music collection. The cringe reaction of Staz falling madly in love over his first human is hilariously funny. Initially, I was going to sin it and I was like, okay, actually it's a bit too cringe. It's cringe. Then he gets the 180 a bit later on when she dies and you're like, oh, okay, actually no, never mind. It's just showing you that he's getting that initial rose tinted glasses. He's literally wearing the rose tinted glasses, so it's a nice little nod. Show has got a little low-key message. There's a moderation to everything, and Staz is taking things to the extreme. Like, he's the kind of person who doesn't leave his house. He doesn't want to go out into the world. It makes up the excuse that he needs shampoo to actually get out of the house. Staz's territory quite quickly comes under attack from a man-eating plant. I didn't really remember a lot of this episode, and I knew immediately that she was going to get eaten by a plant because there's all this hype on whether Staz is going to eat her because he's a vampire. And I was like, no, actually, I'm pretty sure she dies by plant. He's too busy talking about Japan and fangirling. Some of his men are getting eaten. I think, rest in peace, Yamada. We see this guy coming in to try and take over Staz's territory, but Staz is way too busy, getting angry over the fact that final in Final Fantasy is not final. Isn't the story behind it that the guy wrote it? He wrote it and he didn't actually intend there to be anything else. He didn't think it would do very well. It was supposed to be a Final Fantasy situation, but then it sold really well, and then he made another, and then he made another, and then money does talks. I, for one, I'm really glad that final doesn't mean final in Final Fantasy. My favourite Final Fantasy is one that a lot of people don't actually like very much. It's Final Fantasy X. It was the first one I was introduced to. Fun thing about the show, even if I think it is a little bit fast-paced, watching it now that I've seen so many different animes does have a bit of a different effect. So I look at it and I go, actually, I could see why I was lured into it. I could see why this was hilariously funny to me at the time. I do think it moves too quick and I think it is a little bit jumpy at times. First episode, we go from narration, meeting Staz being revealed to be this otaku, but he's also in charge of demon territory. The girl then gets eaten by a plant, she turns into a ghost, and then very quickly we are off into the human world. So for me, that feels really fast. I wouldn't mind seeing this remade. I do think it would benefit from a bit of a retouching and maybe a slowing down. Staz's more passive side coming out as she tells him to go and answer the phone call because it sounds important. He really just wants to stay there and chat. You get to see that more lazy side to him. Did find myself cringing just a little bit, just a tiny little bit. It's his first crush, I allow it, it's fine. Tense moment where we see the vampire in him trying to resist biting her. The thing about Staz is he's trying to distance himself from being a vampire. As we see in the open, he doesn't like vampires. He doesn't like the idea of them. He thinks they're stupid. He wants to prove himself as an individual, not just a vampire. So a lot of this episode is trying to get those ideas into your head that Staz doesn't want to be seen as a vampire, but we can see in this moment that he has the urge starting to bubble up in him. Let's quickly talk about the fight because I think the fight was quite fun. It's a first proper intro into Staz and his fight styles. It shows you how powerful he is, and it's actually kind of scary. Now, the anime is very brightly coloured. It's very comic, and this has got a very big One Piece-y feel to it. The guy sat on this plant and it's all going crazy. It's comic, but then you realise that the way that Staz ends him is not comic in the slightest. He has the power, which is very similar to Trafalgar Law from One Piece, where he's able to crush people's hearts. That sounds as brutal as it is, but when you watch it, the way that it's being played very comically, you kind of brush it off. But me watching it a second time around, knowing what was going to happen, I'm like, actually, it's very brutal. But the way that you've played it off, I don't actually think about the brutality of it, how impressive his powers are, why he is the man at the top. The twist at the midway point of the episode is that the human has sadly been eaten by a plant. Sadly, gone too soon. The skull as well. Her skull is just sad and depressed. It's cute. And the fact that he starts to clean her skull and puts it underneath his, probably a PS3. It's still quite a sad one that the girl is in half an episode and she dies. That's why I think Bloodline is unique. Obviously, we get that fan servicey moment because she's completely nude when she's a ghost. I can see myself going, okay, it's not as funny as maybe young me thought. Because I remember really hyping up Bloodlad when I first watched it. It was just funny. It was different. At the point, I hadn't watched as many animes as I have now. I think, according to Mal, I've completed nearly 900, but I've seen over 1,000 animes. When you go back to watching stuff like this, I'm looking for different bits, and I find myself being a bit more critical of the anime, but it is still fun. There is a nice, fun Uniqlo advertisement placement on her shirt. He gives her clothes, but he doesn't actually give her full clothes because at that point he's lost his interest. As he says, you've lost your charm. I don't understand why you've lost your charm. It's because she's dead. He's not interested in a dead human because now you're part demon, as they say. You're turning into a demon very slowly. So he's not interested anymore. 180. He's no longer that boy who's absolutely madly crushing the most beautifulest thing he's ever seen. He's now not interested. He's sat on the sofa reading his manga, Dragon Ball, trying to find an answer to how to revive the girl. The Blood Pact is mentioned in episode 1 to set it up for the rest of the season. He is going to try and find a way to bring her back to life. That is the main goal for Staz. Motivations, know what he's doing, you know why he's acting the way that he is. But it is so funny to see him go from being madly in love to 180 reading manga, ignoring her as she's cold. She's complaining that she has no clothes. I feel really bad for her because she's just kind of stood there in a t-shirt and boxers with no underwear on. And it's like, this is kind of awkward. She's had a rough day. She's walked into the demon world somehow and now she's dead. And now she's just standing there being ignored, which is very sad for her. They do kind of mock the culture in a sense. Too much of a good thing is a bad thing, and everything should really be done in moderation. We see the X strings. Staz is living in a world of fantasies. He's ignoring the real thing. She's the real person from that culture that you like. But there's that hidden message is that you're not going to find all your answers hidden in a manga. He's there trying to read Dragon Ball, trying to find a way to revive her. And obviously he starts yelling about the Dragon Balls and everything. But she then realises that actually, if I'm going to stand the chance of being revived, I've got to do something. I've got to suggest that we go and look at the area I came in the first place. Because Staz is probably going to be sat reading every single manga, wondering why things aren't working. Because he can't draw that line between fantasy and the real. Plot does start to move in the last chunk where we are introduced to the Dark Curtain, the reason why she wandered into the realm in the first place. Somebody with very high power has made this doorway between the two worlds, which leads you to the questions of who. Are they still in the human world? Are they in this world? Why is it there? Are more people going to become like victims of this? So we start to set up the big questions. We start to see the real Staz, the lazy one who lives in a fanfic. You can see that he only really wants to help because it benefits him. He just wants to go to Japan. That is his ultimate goal, which again is mocking the idea of people wanting to go to Japan just because they like the anime or something. There's a lot more to the country than just anime. The anime itself is trying to be real. It's trying to be a bit more awake kind of anime. But we do get a nice fun moment where Fuyumi gets to be the fangirl and she fangirls over the cute talking animal, which I probably would do. As much as I really hate being that cliche, if there's a cute animal, I probably will go say hi. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm such a stereotype. I hate it. Animals, man. I work with animals. Animals are great. The end chunk with the little party and the reason why Staz takes her to the third eye in the first place to just check that she's okay to go to the human world. I like it because we know that he wants to go to the human world more than anything, but he stops them from going through because he needs to check that she's actually going to make it. Deep down, under all the fanboy, under all the otaku, there is a heart under there. He has promised that he's going to revive her. He wants to just make sure that she's going to be okay for the journey, which is really, really nice. It's just hidden underneath everything else. So he just needs to maybe rearrange a few things. You do see it. Staz does grow during the 10 episodes, which really hope that at some point it's remade. I don't know if I'd want a season 2. I think I'd probably want a complete reboot. Now that I've seen it, I think a reboot would be nice. It does end quite nicely with a little party where Staz is welcoming the Mimic. The only reason Staz can actually go to the human world without losing his turf or without having to abandon all the people who live in his territory is because we do get the Mimic. The Mimic does feel like a bit of a plot armor. He suddenly walks in and he can turn into Staz and that's it. We're going to leave you here whilst I go on this journey. We end with a fun party and then we are preparing to go to the human world, which sets up the next episode. The ED I really like. I think it's nice to see those very strong colours. There's some really nice symbology too because you've got that red moon in the graveyard symbolising that death aspect, that you've got a ghost and you've got your main character. It's got a bit of a journey vibe. You've got two characters. The other character I'm not going to spoil for you guys, but there is a hint with them mirroring each other. The two girls hold up their hands and they pretty much mirror each other. And if you look at the worlds behind them, get the gist that maybe they've crossed over. Maybe they are now polar opposites to each other. Is this possibility the person who opened the portal? Many questions come to your mind. So that is the first episode for Blood Lad. I do recommend it for Easter eggs. I don't think it deserves the 8. I do think I might have been a wee bit generous. The main reason we're doing this show is because I want to show you animes that I've enjoyed in the past. I get to now go back. I've seen a lot more. I've watched different stuff. I go back with a different viewpoint. It's been 10 years and my view has changed, which I think is fun. I think it's nice to sometimes revisit things. I think Blood Lad is great, but I do think it would benefit from a reboot. It needs slowing down a little bit. I think the art style is fine. I actually think the art style is very Som 100 like, so I don't think the art style has any problems. Maybe pop in a bit more. Maybe it needs to be handled in a little bit of a different direction. I think overall I probably would agree with the 7.2 that Mal's giving it, but it is a fun watch and I definitely recommend it if you are feeling bored. It's only 10 episodes, so it's not really going to take up much of your time. I don't really remember too much about it. I recall there being a really serious section with the brother, that getting quite sad. Thank you guys so much. I hope you guys are enjoying yourselves. 5 more of these to go now. So the end of Clockwork Rewind. We are going to go on a break because I've actually got 3 animes I need to break down next season. We can let it go on a break. You guys can eventually tell me if you want it brought back at some point. I am having fun with this and it gives me a chance to talk about animes I may never have spoken about if I hadn't have done this, because we focus mainly on seasonal stuff. Thank you so much. I hope you're looking after yourselves, guys. Thank you for your support. Bye bye.